Well, the reason why we brought over the delegation to Brussels is because in response to a question I put into the European Commission around whether or not the Irish government have communicated the level of the housing crisis in Ireland, the response from the Commission was that they weren't aware of the level of the housing crisis, which means that the Irish government have not brought it up to them. So we decided to bring over a delegation to Brussels made up of NGOs that deal directly on the front line with people who are finding themselves homeless or with mortgage evictions, repossessions. We also brought over the likes of Erica Fleming, who's a direct victim of the policies of the current government. And I suppose the reason why we're bringing them over with our elected reps as well is to basically inform the Commission that there absolutely is a housing crisis in Ireland, but also about sharing best practice, so learning from other countries such as Iceland, how they dealt with their mortgage arrears crisis, or listening to our colleagues at Pademas about how the people are squatting buildings because they can't actually access social housing, or for example how rent certainty is working in Berlin. So we're sharing best practice, but we also wanted to make that case very strongly to the Commission that we have a crisis in Ireland, and if they're the ones imposing fiscal restrictions on the Irish government, then they need to be aware of the implications of that policy.
Well, been here in Brussels today to be a part of the delegation, the housing delegation, to get the EU to put pressure on the Irish government to actually do something about the homeless crisis in Ireland, because the stats are getting worse. There's 3 families a day presenting as homeless, and there's no sense of urgency in Ireland, so that's why we were here today, you know. To be honest, it was very informative, and there's plenty of ideas been thrown around the table, which is great. But you know, we're not the only ones that are experiencing this crisis. But it seems to me that there was one story that was told in there, and it seemed to me that the girl that spoke, it was kind of put to the people nearly to take back the rights for the people. Do you know what I mean? So maybe Ireland needs to do something like that.
I'm on the Housing and Homelessness Committee that was set up by the Dáil, the cross-party committee. It's been really interesting to hear the views of other people, particularly the people from Spain and from Iceland, and how they've been coming through their own crises in relation to housing. It's also very interesting to hear some of our own stakeholders, like the people from Focus Ireland, our councillors from across the country. And of course we've Erica Fleming here, who's been a fantastic campaigner for people who are homeless and in emergency accommodation. So there's a few key things I think from today, particularly from the European point of view, which is, has Ireland applied for European funding? Have they looked to Europe to declare this an emergency and a crisis? Have they looked for funding in that regard? And what funding over the last number of years they have gotten, or what funding they, more importantly, have not drawn down, or funding that they might have sent back, because that has been an issue for us for other projects in Ireland. And that's a key point to today, because it is a crisis. Anyone you speak to that's on the ground dealing with it in Ireland will tell you it is a crisis, and I think it's important that we get that clarified at EU level and get all resources that are available in relation to that put into it for the situation in Ireland.